Today we're talking about how to love life. And so one of the things that we run into in life is that as a human, we constantly run into this, and that is, why am I here? This question, right? Why am I here? This search for meaning, this search for purpose, this search for the answers to how did everything end up the way that it has ended up. And it seems like there should be just more to life, because if you really think about it, and I don't want to start on a down note, but life is filled with suffering. It's in some ways it just seems like we go from one moment of suffering to the next moment of suffering, and kind of in between you try to have some good times, but there's always these moments in life where we're going to have tragedy. We're going to have events happen. We're going to deal with things and troubles and trials in life. It's just that, well, that's life, right? C'est la vie. That's the saying. And so the question that comes to us when we're going through all these kinds of things is, why? Like, what's the point? What's the purpose? One of the interesting people that I've read and still reading, a man by the name of Dr. Viktor Frankl. He's a Holocaust survivor, and of course, you know, if he's a Holocaust survivor, he's gone through a lot of tragedy and heartache and trouble in his life. And this is what he said. He said this. He says, "He who has a why," okay, now think about it. He who has a why can bear any how. Think about that. Let that just set on you. The one who has a why, the one that has a reason, the one that has a meaning, the one that has a purpose can bear any how. They can look at any situation and think, I can get through this. I can figure out a way how to deal with this because I have a why. I have a purpose. And so often we are looking for that why. We're looking for that what. We're looking for that meaning because we look at the shape of our lives, the kind of the shape that we're in. We're all in a shape. Go ahead, and I have a shape today. Here's a shape, and maybe this represents your life today. Just kind of this. Here it is. Okay, this is not a little thing, right? This is a big deal. And so here we go. You got this kind of an odd shape. You know, it's like what is this, right? What do I do with this? What's going on, right? You ever feel that way with your life? Like you just kind of look at your life and you wonder, how in the world did I end up here? Like, if I had tried to guess I was going to be here 5 years ago or 10 years ago or what, like I didn't imagine this. And now I look at the shape of my life and I think, what kind of shape is this, right? What physical shape am I in? What spiritual shape am I in? What kind of emotional shape am I in? What kind of mental shape? What's the deal? Like, what am I supposed to do with this? Like, thanks, God, okay? Thanks, life. Thanks, whoever's running the universe. Thanks, myself, for the decisions I made that brought me to this point. What do I do with this? I don't even know. Like, what's the deal, right? So it's like you've been handed this thing. You've been handed this life, and you're just wondering, okay, well, this is interesting. What do I do next? You ever feel like that? I mean, am I just preaching to myself? Okay, yeah, you feel that way too. Great. So this right here, this what I'm holding, this is actually a theological question. How about that? This is a theological question. Don't you love theological questions? Look, most of the questions we ask end up being theological questions. Let me set this down for a second so that I can be free for just a second, all right? There's your life. We'll just leave it right there for a minute. We'll come back to that. This is actually a theological question. What am I supposed to do with this? What's the point of that? Like, where does that belong? What's the deal? And like most theological questions, most difficult theological questions, the answer lies in your ability to gain a bigger perspective. Sometimes we have questions about God, for example. Well, why would God allow this? Why would God do that? Why would a good God allow suffering? That's the big one, right? So you talk about people that used to be Christians and they become atheists, okay? Or you talk about atheists that they might want to become Christian, but they struggle with these thoughts. They struggle with these ideas of how could a God that is supposed to be this allow these kinds of things to happen. In other words, I look at life and I look at the trouble of life, I look at the shape of my life, and I wonder, where is God in that? Every theological question that seems so difficult to answer is always going to be answered whenever you gain a bigger perspective of God. In other words, there's another quote that I thought was amusing as I was kind of preparing for this message. It's by an athlete named Alan Lewis, and he's an Irishman, and I don't know much else about him. He coaches soccer or something, I think. But this is what he said. He said, "If at first you don't succeed, get a bigger hammer." Yeah. Get a bigger hammer. And that's how I feel about theological questions like this. What do I do with my life? Why would this happen? I think if my answer that I had at first doesn't seem to work, I need a bigger hammer. I need a bigger answer. I need a bigger view of who God is. I need to try and imagine God to be something outside of my imagination. Because a lot of times what we do is we like to put God in the little box of that. This is our understanding. This is the way that I understand things. And so therefore that must be how God is. And then reality wakes up and smacks us down. And we think, whoa, I was completely wrong about that. So now I don't even know what I believe about God anymore. That's because you had him in this little box. And he broke out of your box. And you don't know what to do with that. And you need to understand that you're serving a God that doesn't fit in the box. He does not fit into our imagination. He does not fit into what we think he should be. In fact, he sits way beyond us. He sits outside of time and space. You know, my son, 9 years old, he's about to be 10 in just a couple of weeks, and he's asking me this question on the way to school. He says, "Hey, Dad, I have a question about God." He says, is God like outside of time, and he's just like watching everything? Or is he like inside of time and like working around with it and doing stuff? And I'm like, that's a great question. You know why that's a great question? Because there's some people that they believe that God is somehow like interacting with us, okay? But they don't have this perspective of the transcendent God out of time and space. Because the reality is he's both. He is outside of time and space looking in, and he is inside of time and space looking around and walking around and living inside of us, all at the same time. And sometimes we forget that. Sometimes we think of God like, oh, he must be far away, seeing everything, watching everything, but not really participating in everything. And so we imagine him way out there, when the reality is he's everywhere in between at the same time. So I want to pose this to you today. I'm just going to ask you a question. I'm just going to set up the rest of the message. I want to, when you think about the shape of your life and you wonder, what's the deal with this life? Why am I the way that I am? And what am I supposed to do with this? What if the answer to loving life that you have, what if the answer was not me, right? And by me, I mean you. What if you were to go, what if you were to like point to yourself and say, you know what, the answer is not me. What if the answer is actually we? What if we think a little bit bigger than ourselves and we open our mind a little bit, open up our imagination, but open up our faith a little bit and begin to try to understand that life is not necessarily about me and my shape, but it's about it's about something much bigger. Case in point, today is the Super Bowl. I don't know if you noticed, I'm wearing a Cowboys jersey, and the Cowboys are not playing in the Super Bowl today. In fact, I don't see anybody wearing a jersey of anybody that's playing the Super Bowl today, so we're all in good company. And so there you go. But we're wearing jerseys today because this is Super Bowl Sunday. We're going to have popcorn after church, and make sure you get some. It's going to be hot and fresh, made out there in the popcorn machine. It's going to be awesome. But today is Super Bowl Sunday, and I don't know if you like football or not. If you don't, I'm sorry, I'm going to use the analogy because it's Super Bowl Sunday and you can't pass that up. So it's Super Bowl Sunday, and today there are two teams that are going to meet on the field in Tampa, Florida, and they are going to play a game with lots of commercials, and they're going to try to figure out who is the champion for this season. And it's going to be an interesting game. There are two names that stand out in the middle this whole thing, right? Two names. There's one real storyline here. There's Tom Brady and then Patrick Mahomes, okay? Tom Brady plays for the Buccaneers from Tampa Bay, and Patrick Mahomes plays for the Kansas City Chiefs. And both of them are super talented. Some people say that Tom Brady is the greatest quarterback of all time, but he's in his 40s now, so can he do it again with a new team in a new system, right? And he's made it this far, but can he go all the way for, the 7th time? It's ridiculous. And Patrick Mahomes he's been to the Super Bowl already, and he's won. And here he is again. He's just a young guy. He's only a couple of years into his career, and he's already in the Super Bowl again. And the guy's amazing. He's electrifying. He can be looking this way and throw a pass over there, and it's a touchdown. He doesn't even have to look. He's just I just know there's somebody there, somebody's going to throw it. Right? He does that kind of stuff. Or he throws sidearm. He's falling down, and he throws the ball. And it's just crazy athleticism, right? Tom Brady doesn't do that kind of stuff. Tom Brady, he's old in football years, okay? In football years, he's old like me. All right, I'm just a little bit older than Tom Brady, okay? So I'm rooting for him today because I need the old guy to prove something, okay? Make me feel better. Patrick Mahomes, you got plenty of time to catch up, okay? Well, I need somebody to win one for the old guys today. I don't know. It doesn't really matter, but whatever the case. If he's playing for the Cowboys, I'll be all about it. I'm just going to watch a good game today. So it's an interesting matchup, right? Who's going to be the champion? And so both of these men are great quarterbacks. That's the position they play. If you don't know football, they're the ones that walk up to the line of men before the play starts, and they yell a lot of numbers and code words, and then they take the ball and they look for the open guy and they throw the ball, okay? That's the quarterback. Very important position in the game. You have to have a really sharp mind, and you have to have a great skill set in order to play quarterback. It's a tough position. But let me tell you a little secret about Patrick Mahomes and Tom Brady. And you may not have thought this. You may not have realized this. But Patrick Mahomes is not going to win the Super Bowl today. Tom Brady will not win the Super Bowl today. Neither one of these two men will win the Super Bowl today. At least not by themselves. Because the bottom line is that you have to have a quarterback. That is true. You have to have a quarterback. But you also have to have some linemen protecting him. You also have to have a running back to hand the ball off to once in a while so you don't have to throw it all the time. You have to have wide receivers and tight ends to catch the ball. And then when you're not on the field playing as the offense, you have to have a whole bunch of defensive players to try to get the ball back so that you can get it again. So the fact of the matter is that however the storyline is played out, Tom Brady nor Patrick Mahomes will win the Super Bowl today. Their team will win the Super Bowl today because they are just one part, a very important part, but they're just one part of a whole. They are one part of something that is called a team. And so when you begin to understand, I would just think about this for a second, because when you sit down and if you were one of these quarterbacks and you were sitting around thinking, well, you know what, I know how to snap a ball and I know how to throw a ball and I know where to throw the ball and I can throw it this far, this or this short, and I can do all these different skills. Where do I fit in? Right? Like if there was no football, you're thinking, maybe you're just like wandering around outside and you had a ball in your hand. It didn't even look like if it was just a ball. You're like, I wish there was like some place for me to use the kind of skills that I have, right? It wouldn't matter. They'd be off doing something. They'd be selling insurance or something. Like they would do something else if there was no football. But the fact of the matter is that their skill sets puts them on a certain kind of team to do a certain thing. And when you begin to understand this fact, okay, you look at the shape of your life and you go, I know how to do this and I know how to do that. I've been through this and I've been through that. But I don't know what to do with this. The problem may be is that you're looking at your own self and that's all you're seeing is your own self. I don't know what to do with this because you are not looking at out here. You're looking in here, not out there. And the fact of the matter is that we need a perspective change because study after study, I mean, people study, this is science, okay? Study after study shows that those people who have a sense of purpose and a sense of meaning, a sense of belonging to something bigger than themselves, they are less anxious, they are less depressed, they are less stressed, they are healthier, they are happier. When you feel like I have a purpose, when you feel like I belong to something that's bigger than myself, then it changes your whole perspective on life. The first step in learning to love life as you have it, the life that you have been given, the first step in learning to love life is this. Understand that you are meant to be part of something bigger than yourself. You are. The opportunity to belong to something worthwhile and meaningful begins in one place. It begins in how we view our relationship with God. So I want to focus on that for just a moment. Because this is where we get not only our sense of self-worth and our identity, but this is also where we begin to feel completed. You may feel, for example, incomplete. You may feel like I'm not a complete person. I'm missing something. I'm missing a spouse, or I'm missing a job, or I'm missing education. I'm missing something in life. I'm missing. Look, can I tell you that as a pastor, I feel like I'm missing something all the time. I'm like, how do I reach people? How do I minister to people? Look at all the needs that people have. How am I supposed to meet people? I'm like, maybe I should take some classes in psychology or something. Like I thought about it. I'm going to go back to school. I'm going to become a psychologist or something to help people with some of the things they're going through. And I go back and forth because sometimes I feel incomplete in my abilities to do the ministry that I feel like needs to get done. I'm just being transparent with you today. That's just how it is. Maybe you feel incomplete in life. Maybe you say, well, you know what? I have a lot of good things going on in life, but I just feel... There's this... Blaise Pascal in the 1600s came up with this phrase, a God-sized hole. You've heard of that before? Yeah, because that's become cliche now, okay? That's actually really old. 1600s. I mean, you go back over 400 years to Blaise Pascal. He came up with this idea that says that in every person there is a God-sized hole, and only the sense of God, only a relationship with God can satisfy that and fill that. And nowadays we look at it and say it's a cliche, but it's still true. It's still true that every person begins to find themselves longing for something more, and that cannot be satisfied unless God fills that place. Because at the end of the day, we all arrive at this place, every single one of us arrives at a place. It doesn't matter how you're raised. If you're raised in church, if you're raised out of church, if you were raised by, good Christian family, or if you're raised by total atheists, somewhere in your life, you're going to have to arrive at a place where you have to decide what you're going to believe. You do. You can't go. You're not going to go through life riding on your daddy or your mama's coattails of faith. You can be born into a Christian house. It doesn't make you a Christian. It's true. You have to decide what you're going to believe about God. You're going to have to decide, is there a God that made me intentionally and on purpose? You have to decide that. Because if that's true, if you're going to believe that, well, that changes everything. You also have to decide, is there a God who made me, or is there a God, and maybe there's a God that created the world, some kind of force that caused everything to be, but now that force, that God, that energy, whatever you want to call it, now just kind of sits back and observes and just watches. So the universe came into being and here we are, but now, we're just kind of on our own. Maybe that's a very deistic worldview, okay? Not the correct one, but it's the deistic worldview. So you're going to have to decide that. Or maybe you decide, you know what, there's no God. There is no God. I'm totally atheistic. No God whatsoever. We're just here by random chance. I can't explain it, but there was a big bang. There was some energy that blew up, and then there was matter that began to form planets and stuff, and then there were some amino acids that kind of came together in this soup, and there was a lightning bolt, and it gave life, and et cetera. Okay, so here we all are today. Okay, and say hello to your cousin the monkey, and all this kind of thing. All right, there's all kinds of things that you could come to believe as a result of saying there is no God. But you have to come to that point that sets your tone, your worldview, your perspective of where do you fit into things in life. And so the first thing that we have to decide is there even a God at all? And you're all here today, so I'm going to assume that you've all decided that there is a God. If you're out there watching online, maybe you're watching and thinking, yeah, I believe there's a God. Maybe you're watching and you say, you know what? I don't even know. I've seen so much. I've gone through so much. I just don't even know. Well, you need to come to a conclusion. You need to pick a side, if you will, because that changes everything. And like, can I just go ahead and tell you, if you're going to be an atheist or a deist, something other than there is a God who created me intentionally on purpose, if you're going to do that, you're not going to ever fill that hole in your life. You're going to be incomplete for the rest of your life. You're going to go to your deathbed and wonder the whole way. You're going to die afraid of what comes next. You don't have to. You don't have to. I can tell you that my life has been filled by a relationship with God. You're surrounded by people that have been filled with a relationship with God. But the way you answer that question determines everything. Determines how you view the shape of your life. Let's go to the Bible, Ecclesiastes chapter 1, verse 2. This is a book that was written by Solomon, the wisest man who ever lived. And this is what he said. He's the preacher in all this. And so you'll see this. He says this. He said in Ecclesiastes chapter 1, verse 2, he says, "Vanity of vanities, says the preacher. Vanity of vanities. All is vanity." You know what vanity means? Anybody want to guess? What does vanity mean? Emptiness, nothingness, pointlessness. That's what it means. He says, this is how he starts. This is how he starts the book of the Bible. Everything is pointless. Well, that's the viewpoint. If you come to the conclusion there is no God, okay, that's where you're going to end up. Can I just tell you, everything is pointless. Everything is meaningless. You can't create meaning. You can fool yourself and say, well, I do have a purpose. It makes me feel good. Well, that's not real purpose. You're making it up. And so what is the real purpose of things? Well, he starts off with saying, vanity of vanities, all is vanities. And then he goes on. You read through Ecclesiastes. If you want a real downer, read Ecclesiastes, okay? It ends good, okay? It ends good. I'm going to spoil it for you in just a second. But if you read through it, you'll find out that he begins to seek out something that's not vanity, something that will give his life purpose, something that will give his life meaning. And so he says, look, I drank a lot of wine. I ate a lot of really good food. I filled my house with laughter. That sounds great, right? We're going to eat good. We're going to have big parties. We're just going to have a bunch of comedians. We're going to laugh a lot and just have lots of merriment, just be silly and, just go crazy. And he said, no, that didn't satisfy me. That's what he said. That was meaningless. That was empty. That was vanity. He said, so then I built houses. I didn't build a house. I built houses. He's a king. He's very rich. I built lots of houses. I built a cottage over there. I built a mansion over there. I built this eco-friendly thing over here. I tried all kinds of different houses. Okay, all kinds of different shapes and sizes. I had one that had a 10-car garage over there, and had one just a little single-car garage. I was trying different things. Okay, I built all these houses. I designed gardens. He says. I got into gardening, and so I built these amazing gardens with mazes in them, and it was beautiful flowers, and they had pools of water and waterfalls cascading, all kinds of stuff. I did a bunch of amazing things. I did some architecture, right, and just really expressed myself creatively, and that wasn't enough either. That didn't give me any meaning at all. That was pointless at the end of the day. I buried myself in my work, and that didn't bring me any pleasure either, really. I had pleasure, but it didn't really last. It just didn't satisfy me. I brought in singers. Let's go back to the party thing. I'm going to bring in singers and servants to wait on me hand and foot and take care of everything. I don't even have to worry about cleaning house anymore. I got maids that come in and do that. I don't even have to answer my front door. I got a butler that does that. Right? I don't have to make my bed. I got people that do everything for me. And whenever I'm sitting on the throne and I'm kind of administering the affairs of the nation, I've got people singing to me whatever I want to hear, any style, any kind of song. I can do that. I've got it all. All that's pointless too. It's in Ecclesiastes. You can read it. He says, this is what I did. Then he says, then I tried sex. Lots and lots of that. Solomon had hundreds of wives and hundreds of concubines. I don't know if you know what a concubine is, but it's basically a person that you didn't marry, but you still sleep with them. So and they live in his house and all this. So he had not a harem. He had hundreds of them. Okay, hundreds. So he had no problem with pleasure of any kind. If it was sight, if it was sound, if it was something you take into your body, if it was something that you do with your body, he tried it all. And none of it satisfied. None of it had meaning. None of it had purpose. And so you get 12 chapters of this, okay? 12 chapters of Solomon trying everything under the sun, basically, to find meaning, to find purpose, to find something that's not vanity. Now you skip ahead to Ecclesiastes chapter 12 because this is what he says at the end. He goes, all right, so I tried it all. Here's what I know. You ready? Here's what I know. The end of the matter, he says. This is Ecclesiastes 12:13. The end of the matter. This is it. This is the final point. He says, all has been heard. We've tried it all. We've done it all. Fear God and keep his commandments. This is the whole duty of man. That's it. Basically what he says is what I just said before I started all that. Without God, meaningless. Without this idea that God intends something for you and he made you intentionally on purpose, for a purpose, there is no meaning in anything. So we're just going to land there and say, okay, God has created us and he gives us this search for meaning and purpose. And this is where your loving of life begins, right here. This is where you look in the mirror and you look at the life that you've been given and you say, you know what? I can begin to love this life because I'm going to refuse to search anywhere else for fulfillment. This is the first step, is to realize that there is a God and he has made you on purpose. He has brought you to this place on purpose. If you don't believe that, then there is no purpose. I'm sorry. Okay? But if we're going to believe that there's a God, we're going to say, okay, so there must be a purpose to my life. Let's go to Colossians 2 and 8. Colossians 2 and 8 says this. It says, see to it, make sure, that no one takes you captive by philosophy and empty deceit. Don't let your mind and your heart be taken captive by philosophy and empty deceit according to human tradition. In other words, be careful about the humanity that you're listening to according to the elemental spirits of the world and not according to Christ. Oh, make sure that you're paying attention to what Christ says, what Christ has done, and not what the world is saying to you through their philosophy and their deceit. In other words, if we had to put this in today's vernacular, it's don't listen to Hollywood fiction. Okay? You can be entertained by the movie, but you need to understand that what you're watching is fiction. The characters in that movie, they seem like, oh, well, they're so in love, and they have it all together, and they're going to live happily ever after. It's fiction. It's like it's made up, okay? It's not real. You can't do the kinds of things they do in the movie and expect to get the same results because that's not real. Don't let Hollywood sell you this idea of what love is and what life is and what meaning is and what purpose is because they don't know. They're caught up in themselves. You don't need to listen to TV psychologists trying to sell you their latest book, okay? It's the same rehashed stuff. Every 10 years or so, they just rehash the same thing, give it a different title, call it something different. You don't need to listen to a bunch of talk show hosts trying to, grab ratings. They create turmoil. They create questions and topics just to draw you in so you'll be fascinated by that and then think, man, my life isn't all that it's cracked up to be. If you're in school, you don't need to listen to college professors who are too smart, quote unquote, for their own good. Right? They've talked themselves right out of meaning, right out of purpose, right out of fulfillment. Yeah, they will. They got so academic with everything, they think that they've learned so much that they've learned right out of meaning, right out of purpose. Like, why would you listen to somebody that doesn't think what they says has any meaning? How about that? Like, if there's a college professor and he's going to tell you or she's going to tell you there's no God. For example, we're going to argue humanism. There's no God, there's no real purpose, there's no real point. And so basically what you're saying to me, professor, is that what you're saying is ultimately meaningless too. Why in the world would I listen to meaningless stuff, right? Teach me something about the history of the world. Teach me something about how the mind works. Teach me something about science. Teach me something. But don't get off into this philosophy business of nothing matters, because if nothing matters, then why am I even sitting here? Well, I'm just wasting my time. Why pursue knowledge if knowledge is meaningless? Why pursue anything if it's meaningless, right? So that's where we're going. So don't fall for the comparison trap on social media about that, right? So we see it all the time. I do it all the time. When I post a picture on Facebook, okay, or on Instagram, it's something usually happy or something interesting. And people think, wow, Ben Sanders has the most interesting life in the world. Nothing bad ever happens to him. His kids are always smiling. He's always smiling. His wife is always happy. It must be just wonderful to live as Ben Sanders. It must just be incredible. And I can just tell you that whenever I'm taking the picture here, there's all kinds of stuff happening outside a frame that you don't see and that you can put on a smile and post something. Or your kids can do something cute and you can take a picture of it. That doesn't mean they're not on your nerves 5 seconds later. Okay, that's the truth. Okay, and so don't fall for these. That's what Paul is saying here in verse 8. He's saying, look, don't let anybody take you captive by philosophy or empty deceit. I mean, social media is a bunch of empty deceit. According to human tradition and elemental spirits of the world, don't fall for all that. Don't feel like you're incomplete because it looks like everybody else is so complete. I promise you, they're not. They're trying to get like. They're trying to get you to hit like so they'll feel better about themselves. That's why they do the poses. You know. Okay, you ladies do this a lot. Not this angle. This angle. No. This angle. It's always up. Okay, because that gives you the best lighting and the best angle. We were at a very nice restaurant just a couple nights ago. Tamara and I and the couple next to us. That's what the lady was doing the whole time. She had her phone out, and I'm like, you're in a very expensive restaurant, eating very nice food. She got her phone out, and she's just taking a picture, and then she'll look at her phone, she'll edit it, and like, no, not that one. Then she'll do it again. Yeah, this kind of thing. I want everybody to see just how perfect this moment is. It's like, well, I mean, you took a lot of perfect moments to make that one perfect. So you're just trying to get likes so that you can feel better about yourself. I understand. I do the same thing. Okay? I do it too. We all do it. All right, we post stuff so that people will think, yeah, that's cool. And we'll get the likes and they're like, yeah, I'm cool. People think that what I did was cool. I feel so much better about myself. We do that. But what does the Bible say in Colossians 2:9? It says, be careful about that. It says, for verse 9, it says, in him the whole fullness of deity dwells bodily. Talking about Jesus. In Jesus, the whole fullness of deity dwells bodily. Everything that God is in Jesus bodily. When you see Jesus walking around in the form of a man, that he is the fleshly manifestation of everything that God is. And in verse 10, and you have been filled in him. You have been filled in him, who is the head of all rule and authority. In other words, you don't have to fill yourself with philosophy. You don't have to fill yourself with human deceit. You don't have to fill yourself with trying to get people just to like stuff so you'll feel better about yourself. You are filled with him. When you receive Jesus Christ, when he puts his Spirit inside of you and on you and through your life, you are filled. You are completed in him. And so this shape, when we talk about this shape, it doesn't have a big hole in it because you're filled in him. So we have to resist this urge to focus solely on ourselves, okay? Obviously, it's healthy to have some introspection, okay? I'm an introspective kind of guy. So what I do, I think about what did I say? How did I say that? How did that was perceived? Why did I do that? Why do I think this way? Why do I feel this way? I think about myself all the time. You probably do the same thing because you're human. And so introspection is good. That's how we process what has happened. That's how we choose to change. That's how we grow, by looking, somewhat objectively. We try to be objective about ourselves, okay? That's how we improve. But there is a line that we don't want to cross between self-awareness and self-indulgence. Okay? There's a difference. There's a difference between understanding who I am and why. So I take the personality test and I understand, I'm an INTJ on the Myers-Briggs, and I'm an Enneagram 4, wing 5, okay? So I get all that, and I understand my strengths, and I understand my weaknesses, and I know my personality and all this, okay? But I can't live in all of that. I can't get consumed by all of that, because then it turns from self-awareness into self self-indulgence, okay? Because we're not all narcissists in here. Like I know pretty much all of you in this room, and if you're watching online, I'm sure that you're not a narcissist, okay? Maybe you are, but probably not. Maybe you have some narcissistic tendencies, but a narcissist is infatuated with the way that they think they are. They just are. They think they're so great, and nobody else is. And so we're not like that. But we can very easily fall into this trap of thinking only about ourselves. This very narrow way of thinking. And it usually comes across like this, okay? Let me give you some examples. Oh, I can't believe this terrible thing has happened to me. Terrible things always happen to me. Okay? You ever said that, thought that? Okay, don't nod your head. I don't want to judge you. I don't know anybody that really knows me. I don't know anybody that really likes me. I don't know anybody that really loves me for who I am, because nobody really understands me. Okay? Watch this. I never get what I want. I never do. Everybody else gets what they want. They seem to have these happy lives. I never get what I want. Or, look how bad I messed up again. Well, I can't believe that I did. Look at this. I mean, this is what I do all the time. Have you noticed a certain word that's appearing in this over and over again? I. It's all me, myself, and I, okay? And the only time you actually look at others is to compare yourself to them, and no wonder you don't see the bigger picture. Okay? No wonder you don't see it. That's why Jesus said in Matthew chapter 10, verse 39, he said this. If you're using a red letter edition, it'll be in red because this is the Master himself speaking. He says, whoever finds his life will lose it. Think about that. If you find your life, you will lose it. If you think that you have, I'm doing it. This is what I'm supposed to do. I've got it all figured out. I'm doing what I want to do, how I want to do it. You're going to lose it. If you find your life, you'll lose it. Whoever loses his life for my sake will find it. Think about that. Wow, that's kind of different. Okay? One says, if you're focused so much on yourself, then you're going to lose sight of who you really are. If you're always looking at yourself, then you're going to lose the focus on everybody else. In other words, Jesus is saying, whoever will stop worrying about their life in order to live it the way that I want will find more than they ever hoped for. Think about that. Think about that. So the solution to this problem is really about this. It's about something bigger than you, because you were made on purpose to fit in a certain place. We walk around with life like this. This is my life. What am I supposed to do with this? What's the purpose of this right here? But all along, you weren't supposed to be this standalone thing, because by itself, it doesn't make any sense. Okay? But when you begin to realize that your life actually fits in a different kind of way, oh, that kind of lines up with this other person. That kind of lines up with something else in society. Yeah, and then, yeah, this looks like that would go right here. Okay. Now it looks like that was actually meant to be something. But only in the scope of the other pieces. If you're only looking at this piece, I don't know what that's supposed to do. But if we can open up our perspective and see the other pieces around us, then we start to see how things fit together. Your life makes more sense when it fits into the lives of others. Okay? When you stop thinking about only yourself and you start to have a bigger perspective, something bigger than yourself, then things begin to make more sense. If you'll lose the focus on yourself, Jesus said, you'll find yourself. Yeah. If you'll lose your search for purpose in yourself, you'll find your purpose in someone else. Someone's else. These shapes, they go together. And you weren't called to do life alone. How about that? God said, I'm going to talk about this next week, but God said it's not good for man to be alone. That's what he said. We'll dig into that next week when we talk about marriage. And this thing's going to get a lot bigger. So this is the top of what we're talking about next week. So we got multiple things to go over next week. It's going to be so great. But God said it's not good for a person to be alone. So that's why he made a female for the male. That's why he created Eve for Adam. And because God said, look, from the very beginning, I want you to understand it's not good to be by yourself. You need to be, this is how he designed it. Yeah, and the idea here is that God has a team. How about that? We're wearing jerseys today. That kind of fits. God has a team. He's not asking you to do everything. He's asking you to be part of something bigger than yourself. And when you choose, for example, to repent, which means to change your mind, you decide, you know what, I was living for the world, but now I want to live for God. When you choose to do that, you join the team. I don't want to be on my team anymore. I want to be on God's team. It sounds like a really cool team. Then you choose to be water baptized. You know what happens when you're water baptized? You take on Jesus Christ. Just like you put on new clothes. It's literally the same word. Put on Christ. The words put on Christ is the same thing as putting on clothes that resemble Jesus Christ. So you literally put on the team jersey when you get water baptized. Okay? Like you're like, I belong to Team Jesus. I want everybody to know, so I'm putting on the jersey. And then when the Holy Spirit baptizes you, you're energized to do the work that's required on this team. You see, God's team is not out to score touchdowns. I mean, that would be exciting. He'd just run up the score all day. But he's not out to score touchdowns in a meaningless game. He's reaching for people. He doesn't score points. He's reaching for people, and he's looking for people that are far from himself, and he wants to give them a hope and a future for eternity. And so when you join the team, that becomes your goal. That becomes your mission too. It's not about you anymore. It's about reaching people, getting them on the team. Reach people, get them on the team. It's about grow the team. Become part of something bigger than yourself. This team concept that we have, this idea of being a part of this team, plays out in two main ways, okay? The first one is the church. The church itself is one of the ways that God's team plays out. The second is marriage. Today we're talking about the church. Tomorrow, maybe I'll start preparing tomorrow, but next Sunday we'll talk about marriage. Let's talk about the church for just a moment. 1 Corinthians 12:12 says this, just as the body is one and has many members, and all the members of the body, though many, are one body, so it is with Christ. As it is, there are many parts, yet one body. And the eye cannot say to the hand, I have no need of you, nor again the head to the feet, I have no need of you. On the contrary, the parts of the body that seem to be weaker are indispensable. Whoa, let's just hold the horses right there. The parts of the body that seem to be weaker are actually indispensable. You may be thinking, wow, I'm so this. I don't have all. You could be indispensable in the body of Christ. Think about that. And the body cares for one another. We're a team. It's like you're not in this alone. One of the things, when you're part of a team, it's no longer just about you. It's about all of us. Check this out. 1 Corinthians 12:26 says, if one member suffers, all suffer together. I have a neighbor who is also a Christian. Just lost his son tragically just a couple of weeks ago. 16 years old. Tragic thing. He's a believer. He's part of another church, but still, he's my neighbor. Been to his house, calling him, texting him, praying with him, spending time with him. Why? You're suffering with them together because we're part of the body of Christ. We have the local church body, but we also have the global church body, and we're part of the same family. So we suffer together, and we rejoice together. You get a new job, you succeed at work, you win the lottery, whatever it is. Your kid wins the championship on the baseball team. We're going to celebrate together. If you win the lottery, we're really going to celebrate together. But we're going to celebrate. But if something tragic happens, we're going to suffer together. We're going to grieve together. We're going to love each other. We're going to care for one another. And so you are the body of Christ and individually members of it. You don't lose your individuality. You're individually members of it, but you gain a much bigger perspective when you become part of the body. See, the church, the body of Christ, is how God chooses to reveal himself to the world. He does. Jesus is no longer walking around in the flesh here. Now he has the church. That's his body, and he's the head of the body. John 13:35 says when we start to live this out, that people are going to know that God is in us. He says this, by this, all people will know you are my disciples, if you have love for one another. Not if you have love for yourself. If you have love for one another. If your perspective is not, look at me, look at me, look at me, look at me, worry about me, worry about me, worry about me. If your perspective is taking care of the body, taking care of one another, if people can see your love that you have for each other, they'll know that I'm there, that you're my disciples. So, what should we do about this? Here's where we're coming down to the wire here. Number one, come to church. Well, you're already here. If you're watching online, come to church. Okay? It's time. It's time for people to come to church. Okay? You can wear your mask. You can socially distant. You can wave from across the room. You can wash your hands. Okay? You don't have to sing really loud if you don't want to. But you need to come to church. You need to find ways to serve one another, to love one another, to be in community with one another. Some of you feel so distant from God right now. You feel like everything's just all topsy-turvy because you've been separated from the body. You've got this piece, and you're like walking around with, what do I do now? Because of COVID and all this other, you've just been stuck at your house. It's time to come back together with the body so that you can be fulfilled again, so you can begin to do what God has called you to do. In December of last year, Gallup, you've heard of them, they do a lot of polls and a lot of studies. They did a poll in December of last year that assessed Americans' mental health. They said, how do you feel like your mental health is improved or lessened? And they tracked it across demographics of gender, political party, ethnicity, marital status, age group, income, and church attendance. Can I tell you that on that poll they did, every single demographic went down in mental health. Every single person felt like they had less positive things to say about themselves and how they felt, except for those who were going to church regularly. The people that were going to church regularly went up in mental health assessment. They were the only group out of all the people that were surveyed. People that said, I am going to be a part of something bigger than myself. I'm going to make this a priority. I'm going to make this a priority. Yes, there's a time to, okay, well, we need to do lockdowns. We need to be safe. We need to do this and that. But you've got to make this a priority. It's time to readjust your priorities. It's for your own good. It's for your own good. You've been wondering, what do I do? Why is my life the way it is? Get in the body. Get plugged into something bigger than yourself. This is the time where your chapter, this season you're in, can change. This is where the feeling of you don't fit in anywhere, the one where you feel like I don't belong, the one where you're just dying for a reason to truly live, this can end because it's time to get in the body. And you go, it can't be that simple. No, it's exactly that simple. Lose your life and you'll find it. Give yourself to something bigger and you'll find more than you ever anticipated. It's the truth. So today, worship team, you can come. Today, I'm asking you to renew your focus. To renew your focus on something bigger than yourself. Okay? It's not all about you. Part of it is. Part of it is. We're going to talk about that next week. Part of it is about you, but it's got to be about something bigger. So I'm asking you, maybe you need to believe in God for the first time. Go to our website, let us know. Fill out that connect form. We'll reach out and connect with you. We want to come alongside you to journey with you. But more than likely, you're already a believer if you're in the house today. I'm just asking you to make a fresh devotion to His work. You're watching online, you haven't been to church in a long time. Now's the time to come back to the body. Devote yourself to serving some way, somehow. It's time to go. Get in on track. Call your team leader, say, hey, I'm ready to start serving. Invite somebody to church. Let's make this thing go. We're coming out of it. We're coming out of a season. We're coming into a new season. Things are going to begin to shift rapidly. You don't want to be caught just worried about yourself. You got to get into something bigger than you are. If you will do this, you will begin to discover what it means to love life again, or even for the very first time, when you give yourself something bigger than you are. If you have a prayer request today, if we could be praying with you about anything, please let us know. The live stream team is putting instructions on how to contact us and let us know how we can be praying for you. If you're in the room today, you can stand. If you have prayer, if you need prayer for anything, I'm going to be right over here while we worship. I would love to pray for you. But we're going to go into worship, and I'm just going to ask you just to speak to God and ask Him, God, have I been focused on myself too much? how can I focus on others? How can I give myself to something bigger than myself? May the Lord bless you and keep you. May He cause His face to shine upon you. And may you walk this week with a new sense of purpose, a new sense of meaning, because you have chosen to look at something and to be a part of something bigger than you are. God's going to do it in your life. You're going to begin to love life again this week. We love you. We'll see you again very soon. I want to see you in person next Sunday. It's going to be an amazing time. The rest of us, we're going to stand and worship. We're going to go out worshiping today.